Hello, happy travelers. We just got back from an amazing 7-day trip in the Seychelles.
You guys seem to really like our Maldives budget breakdown, so we decided to make one for the Seychelles as well. So in this video, we're going to be telling you everything we spent and how you can spend a little bit less than us with some money-saving tips.
Before we start this budget breakdown, I want to let you know that all of these prices are for both of us. Factor in that we're talking about the price for 2 people. So the grand total that we spent on this trip was just about $2,077 US.
And that is for, again, 7 nights, 8 days, which is pretty darn good.
All right, let's just get right into it. Category number 1 is transportation.
This includes rental car, ferries, bikes, and bus. In total, in the Seychelles, we spent $423.20 on transportation.
Ferries were by far the number 1 expense when it came to transportation for us.
The international airport is on the island of Mahe, so you have to figure out how to get to the other islands from there.
We spent most of our time on the islands of Praslin and Ladigue, and the only way to get there is either to fly or to take a ferry.
But the only option to get to Ladigue is by ferry.
The ferry is much cheaper than flying, but it still is pretty expensive. Coming from Mahe to Praslin, it's a little over an hour ferry ride, and it costs $60 to $65 US per person. The ferry from Praslin to Ladigue is a little bit cheaper.
Ferries are a very popular way to get around the islands of the Seychelles. So the ferries are big and they are very regular, so you can book them online ahead of time, which will save you a little bit of money. And if you guys watch our videos, you know that we don't plan ahead of time very often. So we spent a little bit more money to book them last minute, which I do not recommend. Book them online ahead of time. Since these ferries are also pretty large, they actually have different classes of service. That'll be another way you can save money, is by booking the lowest class. We didn't do that for a couple reasons. It wasn't too expensive to upgrade to a higher class, and also the business class had air conditioning, which if you saw our videos, you know that we struggled with the heat and humidity while we were there.
I think it cost an extra $20 a person for the air conditioning upgrade, and like we said, we didn't book these in advance, so when we went to book our return ferry, business class was the only spot that had seats available.
Darn.
So book early, save yourself some money, but you're not going to get air conditioning. Also, while we were on the island of Praslin, we decided to rent a car for 1 day. That ended up costing about $50 US.
For a 1-day rental.
So it's a little on the expensive side to rent a car. There is also the option to do the public bus, but the buses don't give you as much flexibility and they do not run very regularly. We tried to do a bus on a different day and it didn't work out the best.
But it is very, very cost effective. So if you didn't want to spend the money to rent a car, you could get around on the public bus pretty easily.
A bus ticket costs about 35 cents per person for a one-way ride.
With no air conditioning.
No.
You just have to make sure you don't really have to be anywhere at a certain time because they're pretty infrequent.
But it's very, very cheap. So that's another way that you can save money getting around Praslin.
We are happy we did get to experience it at least one time on the Seychelles.
On Ladigue, however, there are no cars that are available to rent, and the main mode of transportation is by bicycle.
It's very likely that your accommodation will have bike rentals available, but if not, in the main part of town, which is very easily walkable, there are big bike rental stations, so you won't have trouble finding a bike rental.
Bike rentals usually cost about $6 US per bike per day, and we ended up renting bikes the entire time we were on Ladigue.
Don't worry, the island's very bikeable. There are some hills, so it can go up and down a little bit, but it wasn't too bad at all. We didn't have much of a problem.
The next category we're going to get into is food. We ended up spending about $542 on food during our 7-night stay.
For 2 people for a week, that's really not bad, especially coming from the Maldives where a cheeseburger was $45. We were pleasantly surprised. One of the ways we were able to keep food costs so low was that during the first half of our trip, we had a kitchen in our accommodation, so we made all of our breakfasts, a couple dinners, and I think we made some sandwiches and stuff for lunch.
And that is a definite money-saving tip. Eating at restaurants every day can add up really quick. We spent about $125 on groceries. That provided something like 5 breakfasts and a couple dinners, so it's definitely a cheaper way to go.
And if you're looking for accommodation that has a kitchen, those will be your self-catered options, which I didn't know what self-catered was until I went to the Seychelles, and it means it has a kitchen.
On Ladigue, we did not have a kitchen, and even though breakfast was included, we still ended up spending quite a bit of money on restaurants.
I would equate the prices in restaurants on Le Digue to be similar to what they are in the US. It wasn't super cheap the way you might find it in like Southeast Asia or Central America, somewhere very cheap. But again, coming from the Maldives, it seemed pretty inexpensive to us.
On the low end, you can get a meal at a takeaway restaurant or a more budget option for about $10 per person. If you go to a nicer restaurant, expect to pay $30 or $40 per person, especially if you're including alcohol. We did a couple nice dinners, we did a couple takeout dinners, so we had a decent mix of everything.
So if you want to get cocktails at any of the restaurants, or there are beach bars around, which is a really cool vibe, you can definitely do that. Just know that the prices for cocktails isn't super low. You're gonna pay between $10 and $20 a drink. So it's definitely more about the experience. A good way to save money is actually you can just get a smoothie at these beach bars that doesn't have alcohol.
Or go to the grocery store and get a couple drinks and bring them to the beaches yourself.
For accommodation for 7 nights in the Seychelles, we spent a total of $667, which is actually pretty good.
There are a lot of luxury resorts in the Seychelles where you can definitely spend a lot more than that.
Because there are so many islands to stay on and so many options, the budgets for accommodation run the gamut. So you can stay at luxury resorts, or you can stay at hostels and maybe only spend a few dollars a night. It depends on your own budget and your comfort level, so that's great to know when you're going to the Seychelles.
In Praslin, like we said, we had the self-catering apartment. That ended up costing $198 for 3 nights.
It had really good air conditioning too. If you want an air conditioning in the Seychelles, make sure you check that box because not all places have the air conditioning. Le Digue is a little bit of a smaller island, so there are less options, so it was more expensive than Praslin. So for 4 nights, we spent $469, which is just over $100 a night, so it still wasn't that bad.
And that Airbnb included breakfast too, so that saved us some money. The next category is tours and admissions. For this category, we ended up spending about $290. One of the first things we did on Praslin Island was take a full day tour to Curious Island. That's the home of the giant tortoises that the Seychelles are really well known for. Just by happenstance, it turned out to be on a private boat. That tour ended up being just about $100 per person.
Which was a little pricey, but it was a really awesome tour and we loved it. And we booked that directly with our accommodation. Again, we didn't plan ahead, so a little bit of planning ahead might save you a little bit of money, or just digging around, you might be able to find a cheaper deal than that.
On Praslin, we also went to Vallée de Mai, which is a nature preserve in the middle of the island. That ended up being a highlight of the trip for us. We really enjoyed our time there, but the admission price was a little expensive. For 2 people, it ended up being just about $50 US.
You can also get a guide there if you want to spend a little bit more money and get a little education about the place, which we didn't do because that was another $70 or so, I think, so we didn't want to spend that. But watch that video if you want to see me freaking out over some trees. The leaves on these things are huge. That was definitely a highlight for me. I was just amazed by the gigantic palm trees there. And then there were a couple other places that required admissions, such as the insta-famous beach on Le Digue, which I'm not gonna try to pronounce because I can't. And on the same beach, we also rented a couple of the clear kayaks for a few hours to take some photos. If we had wanted to take the tour with the kayaks, that would have been a little more expensive.
That's also something to note, that if you just want to get some photos with the clear bottom kayaks at this beach, there is an option to do that. They don't really advertise that. We were able to take the kayaks out for a couple hours just to shoot some photos in between their tours, and it saved us a lot of money. The only other thing that we really spent money on was, in order to come into the Seychelles, you needed to fill out a travel authorization form. There is a fee to do this, and there is a bit of a processing time. Once again, we did not know this until we arrived at the airport, so we had to pay the rush processing, which ended up costing about $75 per person. That was a big mistake on our part. We just didn't do enough research beforehand.
That might not be the case anymore. It just was when we went and there were COVID restrictions. So make sure you do your research before you head to the Seychelles or anywhere else in 2022 and beyond, just so you know what the travel restrictions might be. Save money by planning ahead, kids. Don't be like us. If you watched our Maldives budget breakdown, you know that we didn't mention any of the international flights, and we're not going to do that here either, just because I'm an airline employee, so I get very cheap airline flight benefits. It's not an accurate portrayal of what flight prices might be like.
So the grand total that we spent on this trip for 2 people was just about $2,077 US.
And that is for, again, 7 nights, 8 days, which is pretty darn good.
All food, all transportation, all admission fees, all tours, entry forms, everything.
Incidentals.
We definitely could have done it cheaper, but spending about $1,000 per person for that 1 week travel isn't really that bad.
Especially when you're in a tropical paradise destination. In terms of comparing it to the Maldives, I thought the Seychelles were a lot easier to budget for, to save money on. You were more in civilization on the islands in Seychelles than you were in the Maldives. Definitely if you're looking for a more budget island paradise, Seychelles is going to be your place.
If you haven't already checked out our vlogs from the Seychelles, be sure to go and see all those videos and let us know if you have any questions. We would love to help you plan your Seychelles trip in any way that we can.
If you like these kind of videos, let us know. Maybe we'll do more budget breakdowns in the future. But for now, this is Kelly and Kevin from the Awkward Tourists. Peace out.
The ferry from Mahe. No, sorry. Let's wait till that plane goes by.
Where are you going? Take me with you.
We ended up spending about $342 on food during our 7-night stay.
That's $542.
Just kidding. We ended up
One of the ways we were able to keep food costs, is that bug gonna be in the shot?
Yeah, your bug.
Food costs so low was that the first half of our trip,
Bug.
one of the ways we were able to keep food costs so low was that oh my god, blah, blah.
We did a few different tours in our stay in the Seychelles. Waiting for Kelly to finish texting. Waiting for Kelly to finish texting.
For sure worth it, guys.
For sure.
For sure.
I didn't used to make noises like that when I was in my 20s.